Hey there, Bible buddies. I've got another Bible review for you today, and man, oh man, am I excited to show you guys this one. Now, this edition used to be pretty readily found on eBay, but they're getting scarcer and scarcer, kind of like everything else. I'm super excited by this one, mainly because of the cover material. It's something that's pretty unique, and I doubt it's something that's probably ever going to be done again. If you look, from a glance, you'd probably guess what? Leather, right? In actuality, what this is, it is a very unique material called Presstoff, which, if I have read my Wikipedia articles correctly, shows you how knowledgeable I am. Certainly, if I'm getting this information incorrect, somebody please comment down below and correct me. But if I read my Wikipedia articles correctly, Presstoff was an imitation leather that was made kind of at the tail end of World War II by the Germans. And the reason they made it is obviously because, like everything else during the wartime effort, certain materials were just extremely limited, right? So leather, the invention of Presstoff came about. You have steel that became rare, so you ended up having, ships out of concrete and all kinds of, weird things that they, whatever they could do to kind of make things work. That's what they did. So the Germans used this material, again called Presstoff. And they used it for, if I remember correctly, I think holsters and belts and, just a couple little items here and there. But I'm assuming somebody, caught wind of it and kind of ran with the idea because this cover material kind of came about. Now, essentially, it's a synthetic cover. It's not real leather, but oddly enough, what it's made out of is paper. It's essentially just a bunch of kind of compressed layers of paper that are all glued together and then, given this kind of faux texture here. So it's certainly something that's very unique. It's definitely a very, weird way of doing it. And I guess technically you could consider it a paperback, but it's certainly not the style of paperback that you'd be used to seeing nowadays. So very cool piece of history. And this is one that, if I do part ways with it, I'm going to be kind of heartbroken because, this is just such a rare find and so unique. And it's in fairly great condition, but it's just something that's a unique find. Where else are you going to find synthetic World War II leather that's made out of paper? These weren't around for very long, really, because obviously after the war ended, just production picked up as normal, and they were able to divert leather from being used for belt buckles and those sorts of things, for belts and boots and all that kind of stuff, back to anybody else that needed it. So let's go ahead and get started with the cover, I guess, like we normally would. And you can see this, kind of imitation grain here that's done. And Presstoff is one of those cover materials. I had several Bibles with this material because, again, they were much more, abundant on eBay. And I always bought these on accident because the people would list them as leather Bibles. And I would be like, oh, that's a cool looking leather Bible. And I'd buy it. And then when I'd get it, I'm like, this is not leather. I don't know what this is, but it's not leather. So after doing some digging, I found out, Presstoff is what it is. And it's kind of a weird spelling, but yeah, Presstoff. Let's take a look. You have a couple little perimeter lines there, one on the edge, and then one right at the edge of the book block, and then one interior one. So you have, it looks like 3 perimeter lines there. Right, and then you have Holy Bible Concordance stamped into the cover. And on the spine, you have the continuation of the perimeter lines. And then you have Holy Bible, Red Letter Edition, and World. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spine hubs, and they're kind of pressed down in there. But you can see some of the writing is kind of worn off there over the years, I guess, from use. On the back cover, it's more of that same grain. Weird. Now, Presstoff, the way to tell Presstoff, it's kind of easy once you kind of learn about it, kind of the hot spots. Or as far as really any synthetic material, the areas that give it away typically tend to be kind of this, the hinge here. So if you look really close, you can see it's kind of like cracking and separating all the way down. I'm hoping the camera picks it up. But there's like kind of a slight crack and a separation. I can always tell here in the bottom corner because that's really where they tend to get the most stress and start falling apart. But on either hinge, the front and the back, they just get like these really weird kind of separations that you wouldn't see on like a normal leather. Also with Presstoff, you can see they tend to get these really angular hard bends like this, right? And then when you look on the edge, it's just like a very clean cut line. It's like it was sheared off. Leather would be folded over, but this is just like a kind of like it was just kind of trimmed to size. And if you look really closely there, you can see where it's kind of delaminating a little bit. It's kind of coming apart. So one of those layers of paper is kind of popping up there. Again, pretty unique. As far as the rest of the exterior details go, there's white head and tail bands that have stayed pretty white. And there's a very nice red gilt. There's no gold. It's just kind of a red art I don't know. It's not really an art gilt because there's no gilt. It's just red dyed page edges. But yeah, pretty nice. Very well done. Nice and deep color red. On the inside, we have this kind of Saffiano patterned paper again. We've been seeing a lot of this, and I love it. I mean, I prefer Saffiano leather, but you know, the imitation paper stuff is fine. On the inside, I mean, there's no real corner work to speak of because, again, it's just, you know, kind of cut down to size. So it's not like there's a fold over or anything like that. You know, it's just kind of, like I said, trimmed down and cut to size. And that's it. And this is case bound, so there's you know, no gap here on the spine. There's no ribbons, so I'm going to open it up. And it's obviously it's stiff because it's not. I mean, it's not leather. It's, you know, it's a paperback, a hardback, I guess. I don't know. A combination between the two. So let's turn the first page here, and we have the presentation page, which has oxidized over the years. I'm assuming it was not this yellowed to begin with. And then we have our title page there. I'll show it to you guys. By the World Publishing Company. I don't know what I said. I don't remember what I said, but yeah, this is the World Publishing Company, King James Version, and I believe it's a 1952, and I think I only dated it that because of the dedication here. It's dated 1952. I don't think that there's any stamps. Older World Bibles didn't really do a great job at stamping. If I remember correctly, I think they just stamped the model number on the back, and that's kind of it. They don't really stamp much else. But we'll keep our eyes open and see if we can see anything. On the back of the title page there, you have a little bit of copyright information, but not much. It was made in the U.S. You have your table of contents, and then your alphabetical table of contents. Then it gets right into it. The first book of Moses called Genesis. And you can see here that, you know, the text is going deep into the gutter, so we'll turn a few pages. Again, there's overcast stitching. I'm very grateful for that. But you can see that it's just a plain text Bible. There's no cross-references. There's no footnotes, no translator notes, none of that stuff. It's just a double column verse by verse. They use Pilcrow markers to indicate the paragraphs. You do have some chapter summaries here, which is nice. You also have some running headers up at the top. You know, there's a little bit of, you know, I'm always curious if there's a little bit of overlap here. I would imagine maybe some, depending on kind of the scope of the chapter. But yeah, you kind of get your, you know, double exposure here. And there does seem to be running headers here in the gutters and then also in the exterior corners of the page there. So I'm guessing that, you know, they speak for each column. And then on top of that, you get the summary, the chapter summaries. There's a lot going on. You get a lot of information to read before you read. Then you also have the book name and the chapters that are associated with that page. So you can see 16 and 17 indicated here, and then 18 indicated here. So I guess that they're only listing the chapters that begin on that page is what it looks like. Yeah, and you have double line drop caps. Kind of the same stuff that we've been seeing for a while now. This does not, if I remember correctly, does not have any illustrations in it. I'll flip a little bit through it, kind of chunk through it. Take a look at the poetic section. Not that there's any poetic setting or anything like that, but we'll take a closer look at the paper. The paper is not super stellar, especially considering its age. You'd think it would have been a little bit more, or a little bit, I guess, more opaque, but it's not. There's a little bit of show through there. It's not the best I've seen, but it's not the worst, especially even by today's standards. You know, we're not going to get anything even close to this, but you can tell there that it's also not line matched. So, you know, this is probably one of the few Bibles that I've actually had a little bit of show through coming through, but it's not a tremendous amount. You know, I guess if you weren't a fan of show through at all, this might not be your choice, but let me show you also the Pilcrow markers if I can find one. There we go. There's a Pilcrow right there for you guys, nice and clean. We'll turn over to the New Testament. So we have the end of the Old Testament here. Then we have your marriages page. Again, I'm not a fan of when they put this in the middle of the Bible. I think all of this should be up at the front, only because people tend to miss this when they're, you know, looking through the Bible to see if there's writing. You have births and marriages pages also. A death page. And you have your New Testament title page. And you can see that it is a red letter. We'll take a look at that. If the red letter matches this, it won't be too bad. Let's hope, right? One can only hope. And there's the Gospel according to St. Matthew. We'll turn a couple pages to 6 and 7, or 5 and 6. Whew, and there you go. So it does appear that this red matches the red used on the art guild. So it's not a terrible red. It's not a great red. It's not a terrible red. It's probably middle of the road. A little more on the better side than the worst side. You guys can take a look. It's a very nice red. Not a very nice red. It's a decent red, right? Now, the problem is you see some inconsistency here. So this red looks a little bit darker, but then when we flip it with the very next page, this red looks substantially lighter. I don't know if you guys can tell even kind of across the page here. This looks a fair amount lighter than this text over here. So I would imagine at some point there might be a little bit of a pinkiness to the red letter. Oh, and there is an illustration. All right, I misspoke. I'll show it to you guys. The Last Supper. Let's see if there's anything on the reverse side there. So it's black and white and color. The Canaanite Mother. I didn't feel any illustrations kind of flipping through. Now it's got me wondering. Maybe it's just that one. Because I don't see any others at a kind of a cursory flip through here. And normally, like, the illustrations are on a thicker sheet of paper. You know, this is not Bible paper. This is like a thicker coated sheet. So normally they stick out pretty easily, like you can tell where they are. So maybe it's just that one. For whatever reason, they decided to throw one in there. Oh, there's a few in the back. I don't know what they're doing. I guess they threw a few in the New Testament, and that was it. So we have a few more there. Let's take a look. The Adoration of the Shepherds, and the healing the blind men of Jericho. So there's a few illustrations kind of throughout. Not very many though, just a couple, a small handful. Let's go to the end of the Bible. And you see these papers held up pretty nicely. It's not really oxidized at all. There's the end of the New Testament. And then it's there's no kind of designation page for the helps or anything like that. It just gets right into the calendar for daily reading of scriptures. And it's kind of a chunky section of helps there. So we'll kind of go through it. Now, weirdly, look what I see after this blank sheet is goodness, these pages are a little hard to turn, the Bible Reader's Aids. So there's a separate section here. I don't know why they didn't put the reading plan in there. For whatever reason, they chose not to. I'll kind of thumb through these. Here's an index. So you guys can take a peek and see what there is. I'll flip through it. Self-pronunciation guide here. A new and practical plan of self-pronunciation. And then you have the Bible Reader's Aids, how to study the Bible, so a quick little guide. Jewish sects and their beliefs. Sunday school teachers' use of the Bible. Christian worker and his Bible. Items of information concerning the Bible. And this looks kind of like standard helps. Yeah, Harmony of the Gospels. Parables and miracles of the Bible. Prophecies literally fulfilled. Answered prayers. Aids for social and private prayer. Kind of neat. And then it looks like a concordance after that. So you got a few little helps there. Warnings and promises of our Lord. The prayers of Jesus Christ. There's a blank sheet kind of separating each section. And then you have your concordance here. And I'll show you that. There you go. Kind of a small font, to be fair. I think the concordance is probably going to take up the majority of it. Right there, kind of wraps up. And we have a few blank sheets, not very many. 3 blank sheets, although in this instance they wrote a little bit here. So a few blank sheets, and then you have your maps. These maps are quite a bit brighter than what we've been seeing recently. The paper is certainly wider, and the colors are a little more vibrant. You know, everything's been pretty subdued lately, but we're still having that problem there with kind of that overcrowding of the details in the maps. I would imagine that was something that was kind of cleaned up later on, only because, you know, all the maps seem to be, or all the Bibles seem to be using these same maps, these same super crowded maps. So after these maps, just the end sheet there, and that's it. So certainly a very unique version. Again, for me, it's the cover. It's the kind of the unique portion of this. You know, The King James is, seen many varieties. But I just think it's something neat, kind of neat portion of history to understand the fact that, there was a leather shortage, so there was no way to produce a leather cover. So instead they kind of went this route. But we'll go ahead and get some measurements. And I don't know if I can pull the Yapp. I'll try to. It's about an 8 1/4 inches wide. Tall. And the width is right at 5 3/4 inches. And the thickness is about 1.5 inches thick. Let's go ahead and open it up. Take a look at the font sizes. You can see even in the middle of the Bible, it's kind of like wanting to push up. So I would imagine it would take quite a bit to break it in. All right, we'll do the Be and Better here. And looks to be about an 8.5 point font versus Times New Roman. Look at the lowercase m here. Yeah, it's about 8.5 point. About an 8.5 point font versus Times New Roman. So not a terribly small font, and definitely a nice reader if you're looking for something a little bit more portable in size, or definitely if you're looking just for a historical Bible, something that's interesting and kind of neat. I doubt that anybody will ever do a Presstoff cover again for a Bible, unless for some reason there's an animal skin shortage for some reason. But yeah, definitely a neat little piece of history. Bible buddies, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. If you could like, comment, subscribe, all that cool YouTube stuff, it would be much appreciated. Until next time, bye.